Recently, I accidentally dropped my headlamp and broke it, so I'm in the market for a new one. I came across Project Farm's review video on various headlamps and decided to pick out two of his top rated headlamps to compare side by side. One of them being $28 and then the other one being $120. With a price difference of nearly $100, is it really worth getting the higher end one, or should I stick with the lower end one? Let's find out. We're going to take a closer look and compare the AMAKER versus the Fenix headlamps. They do have some things in common, which are features that I was looking for, including adjustable headbands, rechargeable by USB-C, replaceable batteries, although the batteries are different from each other. They are classified as very bright, significantly brighter than my old one, and they are both drop and water resistant. Here's what's different about the AMAKER. It uses 3 batteries, so you have a big battery pack behind your head. The light output properties are also different, more on that later. There's a red LED tail light so that people can see you from behind if you're walking along a road. It has an adjustable beam angle, and you can charge your phone with the USB-A port that's along the side, so you can look dorkier than ever. Just kidding, but not really. The AMAKER also has the ability to sense motion to control the light. To enable this, hold down the on button for 3 seconds and you'll see it glow with a green and red light. Then, wave your hand on the right side where the sensor is to turn on and off the LED lamp. While this is nice in theory, I find that the sensor is a little bit too sensitive and accidentally triggers the lamp to turn on or off if you're near an object or if you're waving your hand around. In my opinion, this is not really a practical feature unless you're keeping your hands and other objects away from your light, and also you're turning on and off the light pretty frequently in a short amount of time. And now on to what makes the Fenix different. First, it uses one slightly larger battery, and there's no battery pack that's behind your head. This means that it's much more compact, and if you're laying down on the ground facing up, for example, working underneath a car, you don't have to worry about a big bulky battery pack that's sitting behind your head. It also has the ability to convert into a 90-degree handheld flashlight, so if you need a small magnetic flashlight, you also have this in a single package. It also features a reading light, which I'll demo later on. With that being said, let's go outside and give both of them a test. Alright, we're here in the backyard with the AMAKER headlamp. This is pretty much the only light source that's around. I'm going to be turning this on momentarily. We have a 14mm lens on the camera, so we have an ultra wide view of what's going on. So here in the backyard, as you can see, it gets pretty dark. Let's turn this on, and as you can see, it's actually pretty bright. You can see a pretty defined edge, which I personally like, and you can zoom in and then concentrate that into a small spot that's extremely bright. Let me lower the exposure so you can see a little bit better. There is a pattern. You can see there's an X in the middle. I guess that's the way the LEDs are set up, and you can see that projected, but it's a narrow, very bright spot. I'm going to bring up the exposure again, and if I zoom back out, that's what it looks like. And when you're walking around, you can see very clearly what's in front of you. You can set this in between as well, so if I bring this halfway through, you can see that you can get a little bit brighter but a narrower area to light. But I usually just keep it at its maximum width in terms of the diameter. This is the brightest setting. Here is the next dimmer setting. Dimmer. You can flash slowly, and then finally off. I don't really use the flash setting, so I think that's a little bit of a waste, but this is the setting I normally keep it on when I walk my dog, if I'm working on stuff and it's not too bright. Maybe I'll lower it a little bit if I'm inside and I'm close to things, but out in the yard, this is the setting I use. Now we have the Fenix light. So to turn this on, the switch is actually on the side, and then you can adjust the different brightness by clicking on it after holding it for a couple seconds. So this is the brightest setting. As you can see, this has a different pattern. It's a much wider pattern, and depending on the angle, if I lower this a little bit to get it closer, I get a little bit of glare that is on my glasses because it's starting to reflect just because the light coming in is just so bright. It is brighter than the previous one, but because of the angle of the beam that's so wide, you can definitely kind of see that in your eyes if you're wearing glasses. Now, I can tilt this up a little bit more. That helps a little bit, but then it's kind of further out in terms of the hotspot. Speaking of hotspots, this thing does have one that's pretty pronounced, and even though you can't adjust the lens, this is pretty much what you get. It does light up more on the sides, but this is a much brighter center than the other one. The other one, you get a defined edge, but it's pretty evenly lit. This one has a little bit tint to the color. I believe it has a slight green tint to the output there, but I actually prefer having the other type of beam versus something that's more scattered and having this giant hot spot in the middle. I feel like that other one's a little bit more usable. This does have, again, multiple levels of brightness. So you got dim, you got brighter, and I think this is the max over here. And then if I turn it off and I double tap on the button, there's a reading light which gives a very dim output. That way it's a little bit softer on the eyes if you're reading something, so you can do a brighter setting and an even brighter setting. So this is a warmer light that comes out, and it gives you a different option in terms of color temperature, but I'm not going to really be using that. Oh, and there's one more setting. If I'm going to be outside walking my dog or in the basement fixing something, I'm probably just going to use the other bulb. And there you go. Let's see, turn that off. And then back to the original LED. One of the things that's unique about this headlamp is that it has the ability to convert from a headlamp to a 90-degree flashlight just by sliding out from this piece, and now you have a handheld flashlight that has a built-in magnet where you can stick onto metal objects if needed, and you can have this operate separately from this part up here. Let's take a look. Here's the flashlight at its lowest setting. We'll bump that up by 1. And here's the next step up. This is the second brightest, and then finally the brightest setting. It is very bright in the middle, and again you have that hot spotting in the middle with that beam pattern, but on the edges it falls off pretty softly. Don't know if that's something that you guys like, but I figured I'll show you. Again, my personal preference is the other type where you have that hard cutoff but more evenly lit center and edge. And if I shine this further out, you can see it does reach, quite far away from where I'm standing. As I'm walking around, you can see more of this light. And here's a demo of that reading light. As you can see, it's a warmer color tone as we talked about. Nice and dim, even lighting, and you don't have that bright LED in your face if you're trying to read something up close. Now that you've seen a demo of them, here are some pros and cons. Feel free to pause. For the AMAKER Pros, we talked a lot about these features, and on top of that, the price isn't that bad. For the cons, it is bulky, there's a big battery compartment that sits behind it, and even the front with the adjustable light, it is a bigger unit compared to the Fenix. I also noticed that the front and back parts seem to get off-centered from time to time, and although this is not a showstopper, I may have to adjust them a little bit between uses. Another annoyance is that the USB port does sit a little bit deeper in and is narrow, so if you have a wider USB-C cable, it may not fit properly, but the supplied cable works perfectly. This has 5 different modes, including flashing modes, and there's a single button that controls it, which means that to turn it on and to turn it off, you do have to cycle through all of the modes. In my opinion, they should have a few modes at most and skip the flashing modes. And on top of that, you do have to push a little bit harder than your average button when you're cycling through the modes. And then finally, if you're adjusting the beam output to its narrowest and brightest setting, you do see an X projected onto the area that you're pointing at. For the Fenix Pros, we have a lot of things that, again, we talked about, including the very bright light output, the detachable light, replaceable batteries, and it's super compact. Now, onto the Fenix cons. First, it's much more expensive than the AMAKER, so you'll have to decide if you like the price point. Number two, it also gives a lot of glare if you're wearing glasses because of its wide light distribution, and I don't find this to be true with the AMAKER, only with this, and probably again due to the angle of light. Also, we talked about this, the light is uneven, so I don't really like that hot spotting effect that we've seen. And also, the on and off button is located on the side, which makes it slightly awkward because this requires you to use 2 fingers to turn the unit on and off. If you were to use one, that would just shift the whole headlamp over. And now we have a 20-minute time lapse testing each headlamp and how the light output will be affected over time from their heat management system. Although the exposure settings were locked in, the lights were set to their maximum brightness to demonstrate the worst case scenario for each product. This is not meant to be a super scientific test, but it shows that over time the light output will change, which I didn't realize until someone pointed this out on the web. And although the Fenix light on paper had a brighter light output in terms of lumens, I do appreciate the AMAKER's light pattern being more consistent over the area that it lights, and the color temperature being a cool white color compared to Fenix's warmish and even a slight hint of greenish tint light. The Fenix light was noticeably hotter compared to the AMAKER after 20 minutes of use, but I can still rest my hand on the case without needing to pull it away. However, with that being said, I'd say that it's probably close to my threshold and it's a couple of steps before becoming uncomfortable. This may be important to you if you're planning to use this as a handheld flashlight. At the end of the day, if you're needing a compact light, for example, if you're working underneath a car and you don't want a big battery pack pushing up against your head when you're laying down, or if you're going on a camping trip and want a reading light that's dedicated, or a magnetic flashlight that detaches from the headpiece, you might consider the Fenix light. However, for me, everyday activities include walking the dog at night, shoveling snow during the winter, and maintenance around the house in the basement. For those, I just need a more basic headlamp. Until I used both of them, I actually didn't know how much I appreciated the light output in terms of consistency and the color of the AMAKER, so between that and the price difference, personally I'm choosing the AMAKER and not spending more cash on a more expensive product. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you in the next video.